speaking of bombshells, kind of a not the best kept secret that the that the Missions were getting sold. The sale went through officially yesterday. It was announced. Press conference today. The bombshell part of that is who's all involved in the new local ownership group. Let's talk about it with one of those, Reid Ryan from Ryan Sanders Baseball, former president of the Astros. He's done so much with baseball, runs a lot of great franchises. Reid joining us now. What a day for you guys yesterday, Reid. Appreciate the time. Talk to me a little bit about the putting together of this ownership group. Very interesting group of people from San Antonio.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me on the air. Man, I'm just so excited. You know, we wanted to put together a group that all had the vision of keeping baseball viable in San Antonio for a long time. And I think this group really reflects the community, and it reflects a lot of people from both the sports and business world that want to see good things happen for San Antonio, and we're just honored to be a part of it.
Reid, I've got to ask you, because obviously when this was announced yesterday and the ownership group and the people that were involved, everybody's automatically thinking, well, could this be a group that maybe somewhere down the line we could be bigger than AA baseball here in San Antonio?
You know, look, I've got that question a lot, and I think that's an easy, dots to connect. But the reality is we need to be really good at what we have right now, which is AA baseball. And if the community ever aspires for bigger and better, we have to be best in class at this level. And the Missions have not been that. When you look at attendance, when you look at the stadium, when you look at a lot of things that are measured, and you take comparable cities around the country, whether it's Nashville or Charlotte or Las Vegas, all of these places have built really, really incredible minor league facilities that are drawing big numbers. And now those places are all in the mix for when you hear expansion of Major League Baseball and teams going to higher levels and so on and so forth. So I think if we want to be in that conversation, we have to address the short term, which is getting really good at minor league baseball, and see where that goes from there.
Reid Ryan joining us here on the Blitz, part of the new ownership group of the San Antonio Missions, and of course, big part of Ryan Sanders Baseball that owns teams like the Round Rock Express, used to own the Corpus Christi Hooks. You know, the Ryan family knows a little bit something about baseball in the great state of Texas. So you mentioned the new stadium, obviously with Graham Weston, so many different locations downtown, whether it's the Institute of Texas Culture over by Fox Tech. Where should we start thinking that new stadium is going to be?
Well, I wouldn't go that far yet. You know, I think where we need to be right now, and look, today was about celebrating local ownership in this group, completing this transaction. But I think if we want to do this thing right, what we have to do is really put together a fully developed plan. And I keep using that term because I've been blessed to get to build 4 stadiums around the country: Whataburger Field, Dell Diamond. I was involved with the spring training facility we built in West Palm Beach for the Astros, and an A-ball facility in North Carolina. And I think if you want to do something right, you really need to take the time to study all the pros and cons to what it is you're trying to achieve. And I think the conversation you had before about growth in the future, I think the conversation about economic development, I think the conversation about how does a new facility benefit everybody in the community and where does that go, it all has to be looked at. And today, I don't think anyone's ready to say they have a belief on what that answer is. But I think all of us realize that those are questions that we need to start digging into if we want to keep baseball viable here for the long term.
Now, Reid, when wherever it ends up, and I'm curious, you're going to build a AA stadium. Like Gordon Hartman, when he built Toyota Field, the soccer stadium here, they built it with the infrastructure that if it needed to expand for MLS, the infrastructure was already done that way. Will this new AA stadium, when it's built, will it be built with the idea that if we get a major league team, it would be easy to expand this stadium and everything around it to the major league level if we get that opportunity?
Well, I'll share the experience we had in Round Rock. We have a stadium that is 25 years old that started as a AA stadium and grew into a AAA stadium. And today is still considered to be one of the best stadiums in baseball. And it's because we looked at where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And there were things that were done early on where we had footings for expansion that were buried in the concourse. We had a design with power and water that enabled us to be able to do other events and to be able to grow into that bigger footprint that we needed to go to AAA. So I think all of those things go into the mix, and all of them have cost associated with them. And you have to look at what is the best use of funds, and that's all stuff that's in the mix. But I think all of those ideas that you just floated out there are things that definitely will need to be considered, and are things we say, hey, we want to have a vision for long-term success.
Reid, when the new ownership group, and obviously I want to get into that a little bit more, but as a Missions fan, as I look forward to next season, what kind of changes, what kind of things can I expect now that you guys have this baseball team?
Well, I think the first thing is we need to get in and learn the organization. I've known Burl Yarborough and Dave Gassaway and, a lot of their top people for a long time. I don't know the Padres extremely well, although I have several good friends over there, but I've not worked with them on a day-to-day basis. I think the biggest decision that needs to be made right now is going to be MLB cut many teams a couple years ago, 42 teams. And there are requirements that all the facilities have to meet in the coming years. And so those are the first things that we're going to have to address, because right now Nelson Wolff Stadium is not in compliance, and it's a long way from it. And fans may not see some of those things, but we're going to be jumping on those right away. And then once we get into that, we'll be digging into the fan experience a little bit more. But I think the fan experience has to be mixed in with what is the long-term plan. I don't think anybody wants to see money spent on a facility that may or may not be there in the future. I don't think people want to see us do something if it's going to be a short-term solution. So there's a lot of big questions that have to be answered. But I think the one thing fans will see is that we are going to encourage all of the staff that we are in the customer service business, that we have to honor the fans' time as much as we have to honor the money they give us to come out to the ballpark. And we have to make sure that the players are accessible to the fans, because at the end of the day, they're the ones paying everyone's salary. And I think that's gotten lost in professional sports, and we want to bring that back.
Reid Ryan, part of Ryan Sanders Baseball, the CEO of Ryan Sanders Baseball, part of the new ownership group that owns the San Antonio Missions. Now, you mentioned that, and obviously it takes a couple of days to build a brand new ballpark and everything that goes with it, wherever that is. You mentioned having to do some upgrades at Nelson Wolff Stadium to get in compliance, but I would imagine, like you said, you're not going to put a lot of really good money in the Nelson Wolff, knowing that a new stadium is on the horizon. How long does it take to build that stadium? I mean, are we looking at 3 years, 5 years before we can expect that new ballpark?
Well, I would hate to comment, because I think if you're going to do anything, it's all specific to where it's going to go, and those decisions have not been made yet. What I would say is the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make sure all of the areas for the players are taken care of. That the demands, I was sharing this today, of what a stadium takes have changed in my time. This has been 25 years that I've been working in professional baseball. I've spent my entire life in this industry. And when I got started in the Texas League in the late 1990s, we had 2 coaches. Today, there's like 8 coaches and support staff. There were no video coordinators. There were no strength coaches. There were no nutritionists. Today's AA clubs, and you look at the quality of players that have come through San Antonio over the years, it's Hall of Famers, it's All-Stars, it's Rookie of the Year, it's MVPs. But these players today are closer to the big leagues than they've ever been. Teams are utilizing their 40-man roster. My time in Houston, we drew guys from AA and AAA on a regular basis and plugged them into the big leagues. That Astros team that won it this year it was just a couple years ago, Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez and, all of those guys, Lance McCullers, heck, even Jose Altuve were all playing in the Texas League. And so we have to be prepared to make sure that the San Diego Padres have the resources they need to win at the major league level. And then we need to move from there to making sure we're answering the community's needs for a stadium. And what I mean by that, Jason, is that really things have changed. This group of Gen Zers, Gen Y, whatever they go by today, their needs are different than the baby boomers. And you're seeing stadiums change. And we did a lot of that at Minute Maid Park by taking out Talus Hill and building all of these cool communal spaces. If you saw the home run Jordan hit in the World Series up on top of, the Green Monster in center, that was a bar area that I built with Marcel Braithwaite with the Astros because we were trying to create cool communal spaces for millennials and people that wanted to come out and enjoy the game from a different perspective. And those are the kind of big picture things that I think I want this group to be thinking about. The way people digest baseball has changed. It's about the community. It's about social. And we want to make sure that we're capitalizing on all the trends in the industry.
All right, Reid, I've got to ask you this question about the ownership group. How in the world did you go to David Robinson and Manu Ginobili and get those two guys involved in this project?
Well, it's really cool. Randy Smith with Western Urban and, Bruce Hill, and obviously have relationships with those guys. And I think, the depth of the sports stars all the way to the business leaders shows how well connected this group is. I've had the pleasure of getting to deal with David Robinson Jr., just a terrific guy. He was out at the press conference today. And, these are people, families, leaders that care about this community, that are living here and that want to see good things happen. And I thought Randy really summed it up well today, where this is about his kids and wanting to create a place that they're going to want to live and raise their kids. And so I think it's cool when you get around a lot of people that are thinking about something bigger than themselves. And the fact they happen to be sports legends just means they understand the DNA of the business. And it's just going to be a special group.
Well, it is. And then, you got Manu, Roger Clemens, Craig Biggio. I mean, it's such an interesting group of people that have come together to make the San Antonio Missions better and hopefully one day bigger. That's just me. But, I just look at this group and think, boy, this is so much bigger than AA, and getting that new stadium and knowing what you have done. Reid, you and I have been friends for a long time, seeing what you did during your time with the Astros, what you've done in Round Rock and with Corpus at the time. Good days are ahead for the San Antonio Missions.
Well, man, I appreciate you saying that. I think the one thing I want fans to know is that we're going to be about long-term, we're going to be about quality, and we're going to be about staying power. And this is a generational asset. Our family's owned Round Rock since the late 90s. We've been involved in baseball at every level, all the way from the state tournament to college baseball to professional baseball at every single level. We love this sport, and we're going to try to, as I said today, honor the game and do things the right way, and we're excited to get started.
Reid Ryan from Ryan Sanders Baseball, congratulations on adding another team to the list of responsibilities that you have. It's good for San Antonio. Appreciate you taking the time with us this afternoon.
All right, guys, go Mission. See ya.